Welcome back. Today we will be talking all about Palantir's Q2 earnings report and conference call from yesterday. But first, I wanted to open with news that Ark Invest has made some huge moves with Palantir stock. So we saw yesterday after market close that Ark Invest has put Palantir stock in all of its funds. And let me explain why this is such a big deal. So the last time we saw any trade with Palantir stock from Ark Invest, it was actually on June 30th and a sale of the stock. This was around $27 or so, I believe. But since then, we have not seen anything. And it appears that Ark Invest was waiting for some killer numbers from Palantir to remain 100% convicted in the company. You'll see they bought more in Ark W and Ark K, but they also added Palantir stock, and this is a crazy move, to Ark G, Ark F, and Ark X. It is now in all of Ark Invest's funds. So what does that tell me? That they think Palantir stock is going to perform so well over the next 5 years that it has to be a part of each of their funds. And that after the Q2 earnings report, they remain convinced that Palantir will do well over the coming years. So why would Palantir deserve to be in a space fund, a fintech fund, a genomics fund, aside from internet and just their general innovation? Well, it really is about what the Palantir platform allows and Palantir's strategic partnerships with day zero companies and allowing genomics and fintech companies to build upon their platforms. So really a huge move, and you'll see that spike. The first time they have bought a significant amount of Palantir since the last earnings report. And you'll see after that last earnings report, the stock rallied a considerable amount. So now we have a huge buy, Ark Invest's first move in a long time, taking the share count overall from 26.5 million up to around 30 million shares. So in the rest of this video, I'm going to break down Palantir's earnings report with what I saw from it, with my analysis and excitement from the quarter. I'll play a video with an analyst's reaction to the quarter and dive into the slide deck report with my thoughts. Let's go. So let's kick things off with this first part of the video here.
We saw revenue accelerate. It grew 49%, but really the key metric that investors have been keying in on with this company has been the commercial side of the business.
Yes.
Break down those results and I guess how sustainable it is, whether this represents potentially a tipping point in terms of that commercial business.
Well, I think the big question that's dogged Palantir for years has always been, are they strictly a one-dimensional company? We all knew that they had huge government contracts, and we all knew that they had blue chip, large contracts. The big question that's always dogged the company was whether they can fully commercialize the product. And I think they answered that question this quarter in a huge way. Revenues are up 90% on the commercial side. And I think they're just starting to scrape the surface of mid-sized business. And once they do that, I think you'll have a tremendous, tremendous catalyst for growth going forward.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of innovation, this is also a company that kicked off this earnings call talking about its Meta constellation and all the partnerships it's doing with commercial space companies to essentially do AI from space as well. So how does that speak to the value proposition it's going out and now pitching to some of these commercial customers?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think the opportunity is huge, and I think the proof is in the numbers. I mean, just on customer acquisition growth. In the previous quarter, it was up substantially, and they're actually on target to actually double their customer base over the course of 21. So again, huge numbers. And then back to the top line, the revenue growth up 49% was fantastic.
One thing I did just want to point out quickly here is actually where the earnings reports have been and what has happened with the stock before and after those. So I believe we had the first earnings report around here, the second one here, and I'm talking about public earnings reports. The third one here, and the fourth one is right here. So we've had 4 public earnings reports for Palantir now, coming up on a year of the company being public. So very exciting to see. But I did just want to point out a trend that I perhaps see, and it aligns with underpromising and overdelivering. So you'll see, I think, because of Palantir's nature of underpromising and overdelivering. They underpromise on expectations, but they overdeliver on results. So what does that mean? That means some of the negativity might actually get to the stock before an earnings report, where analysts or investors might get the idea that this is not a growth company, they're not going to be able to sustain what they're doing. But then Palantir comes out with the earnings report and proves all of that wrong. But then the same sort of cycle and another earnings report. This one doesn't really count as much. It was a bunch of insider selling that actually drove the price down. But same sort of deal on the third earnings report here, which was Q1, the most recent Q2. So I'm not trying to point out technicals or anything. I'm just saying bigger picture, when you have a company and management that underpromises and overdelivers, that is something you have to sort of account for and be ready for. That it does come in waves for the stock and you have to be ready for a bumpy ride. But nevertheless, I think it is one of the best strategies for management and I'm happy they're doing it. So now on to my thoughts on the earnings report here. So this is the Q2 business update. Let's have a look. You'll see right here, the first thing they brought up on the conference call and are mentioning here in the report is this very cool thing called the Meta Constellation. And it really speaks to Palantir's pace of innovation. I think it deserves its own video, so I'm not going to dig into it just yet. And I'm also not going to go over all the numbers because I'm sure you are well aware at this point. But my key takeaways, growth is strong, growth is considerable. And one of the numbers I loved the most was the commercial revenue growth accelerating to 90%. That is huge. Contract value increasing. And this was one of the most important parts of the report, I believe. We added 20 net new customers in Q2 alone, and total commercial customers grew 32% quarter over quarter. And then Q2 commercial customer count increased 61% since December 31st, 2020, so the end of the year. They said they're looking for 100% growth year over year on the commercial side from the commercial customers, I believe. So some very strong growth there. We also had the average revenue from the top 20 customers growing, which is great to see that customers are paying more for Palantir. That doesn't necessarily address the concentration problem, but not a bad thing either. And you'll see it's starting to accelerate a bit. They talked about how many deals they closed, 62 in total, 30 of 5 million or more, 21 of 10 million or more. And the figure I liked most here was growth is strong and total deal value has increased by 63% to $3.4 billion. So they don't recognize all of that right away. They still need these contracts to go through and they happen over time. But huge order value, deal value, I should say. Still talking about Apollo for Edge AI being something crucial to the company. And it was the headline of the last quarterly event, and I think it's really coming together to be something meaningful. And this was huge. We're commercializing Apollo to allow our customers to meet their customers where they are and take their SaaS where it's never gone before. So this might actually have been my favorite slide. They said they're commercializing Apollo, which means they're actually allowing Apollo to be a product and generate revenue for them. It goes a little deeper than that because on this slide, they're talking about bring your own compute, bring your own storage. We will make sure it all works together. So here are the public cloud providers they bring up. AWS, that sounds familiar. Microsoft Azure, sounds like there was a rumored contract with them. Google Cloud, I wonder if there's something going on here. Would Palantir be able to get some sort of partnership going with Google whereby they could connect with Google Cloud and have some sort of strategic integration in that capacity? We know the AWS one is happening. Azure and Microsoft, that has been rumored. I'm pretty certain that is going to be a reality. They have not announced that yet. But what about Google Cloud? Will that happen? I leave that up to you. Back to the day zero companies. Day zero companies are leapfrogging legacy IT investments and building on Foundry. The thing I love about the day zero companies is that they are the ones, they're going to be the ones to prove whether Palantir is right or not about the thesis about being the operating system for the modern enterprise. And I think so far that has been true. But it's really going to be something we need to watch and see develop over the coming years and quarters to see how true that actually is, how well these day zero companies are able to scale using Foundry as the backbone of their business. So very exciting. Foundry for Builders is enabling startups to integrate data-driven decision-making from the outset and efficiently managing increasing complexity as their businesses scale. So I think that is a huge piece to the puzzle here. If Foundry for Builders can enable an organization to scale, that's game over. If they can do it better than anyone else, bespoke software and the rest, I really think that would put Palantir Palantir at the top of anyone's list. In Q2 2021, we made 60 additional sales hires, and our pipeline is accelerating with active commercial pilots up 26% since the end of April. Huge moves here. The flywheel is accelerating, as they say. 60 additional sales hires. That is absolutely huge. The biggest figure yet. So some huge new deals, Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, great to see. So much more going on. And then we saw with the FAA, Foundry will support aircraft certification and operational safety, and also the network effects of what that does. All these airlines are going to have to plug into the FAA, which subsequently uses Foundry. Data Robot, we've talked about that before, so I'm just seeing what else I want to cover. They recently held their annual Hack Week, during which Palantirians have set aside their daily responsibilities to create some of the biggest profound innovations we have ever delivered. I love that. Here we have some Palantirians working on some projects here. I just love to see that, to see what kind of innovations they can drum up. So now is not the time for all the financial numbers, but for a deeper look into the financials, or rather the bigger picture on the free cash flow and such.
But I think the big picture here and the big thing you have to look at is the free cash flow. Another quarter of positive free cash flow. And again, raising the full year guidance from 150 million to 300 million is just unprecedented for a company growing at this rate.
So the operational leverage is something that you're quite attracted to at this moment, and I guess can pick up even more as they continue to grow.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I see very little in the way of headwinds for the company at this point in time. I mean, they're literally, I think, the 800-pound gorilla in their space. I think they've been able to get traction on the commercial side, and I think the growth profile going forward is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, defense contracting is not a bad business to be in either. If you get some high-profile program awards as well, it's steady cash flow. As an investor in this company that is also making significant investments in things like SPACs right now, I guess, what's your response to that? Do you think that there's a value proposition, or it speaks to a bigger, broader, longer-term strategy about where this company's headed?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a value proposition in investing in the SPACs right now. I think, obviously, you just have to be selective in what you're investing in, and I trust that the management that has always been very disciplined over the years is making the right decision, but I do think that can add value without question.
So Palantir stock had an enormous day yesterday, and I really just wanted to take the time to thank all the Palantir employees, Palantir management, everyone working for this company and making such an incredible quarter a reality. I have some very, very exciting news to share, but I will have to save it for tomorrow. So if you liked this video, my thoughts, and Palantir's results, you know what to do. Until next time.